All right. Hi, guys. Welcome back. I'm Christine here with this lovely lady, Patsy. And Patsy will be with us for the next several sessions. So we are going to dive into the chakras, and we are super excited. I'm super happy to have Patsy on here. She's a wealth of knowledge and insight into this world and the psychology of our inner beings. So the first route we're taking is the first root chakra, which we call Muladhara chakra.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Christine.
Yes.
I'm very excited, very honored to be here. And, just talking about the chakra system, it's like, what is the chakra system immediately? And is this the woohoo of yoga? And where's the science of it? Yeah,
there's that too.
Really. I started teaching in the Bible Belt years ago. And it really was like, if you mention chakra, it's like the shock who, what are you talking about? And it was scary for a lot of people. It really was. So, and even for me, I think it wasn't until like maybe 5 years into teaching where I started diving deeper and deeper and just fell in love with them. I think that the chakra system, the psychology of our yoga practice is fascinating.
So when you were in the Bible Belt, I'm curious. I'm like, what was that like? So where were you at this point in time in your teaching?
Yeah. So I actually started teaching in the Bible Belt.
Okay.
So the first, about 4 or 5 years of teaching, I lived in East Texas. And instead of this is just one thing to show you where I came from for my beginning of teaching career. Instead of saying namaste, I gave my students an option because some of them were like, oh, no. I don't even know what namaste, they'd be like, namaste, what are you talking about? So I could give them an option to say amen.
And
so
did they?
Yeah.
Really?
I would be like, namaste. And some of them would be like, amen.
Oh, that's cool.
I know. It's sweet. But it's just like, it's interesting how even just a different language, some people can be afraid of, But I think that I go back to, it's from Tyler, Texas. And I go back there now and I do see the evolution of people being more open to the yogi mindset and noticing too that it's not just all like woohoo stuff.
Yeah.
Even energy itself is so much science behind it and backing behind it.
Yeah. That's so interesting. In an earlier podcast, I shared kind of my yoga journey. And when I started really getting into yoga, I was like, I'm going to be a little reserved with this whole chakra situation. And then, it was, I'll kind of connect it to what I'm going through right now. So I used to be hardcore vegan as, you were, we both were. And just a few weeks ago, I actually just started eating meat. Oh my gosh, yoga center. But my body was really like, you need to eat meat. Anyways, at that point in time, I was this same identity. I was a very much kind of this coming out of a dogmatic Christian life. And the chakras were just that's a little pushing it. But then I started to just start looking at them to actually see what they were offering. And I think exactly what you're saying is it's a languaging thing that people have this fear of the unknown and something that's not normal for them and their own vernacular and their social circles and community. And so we're really looking at the chakras. It is a word, but it can be seen as woo-woo, but it is very much a scientific backing of, and even if we're not even looking at the science behind it, it's just a way to understand our bodies, our minds, our emotions, what we're going through in life, the cycles that we go through in life.
Big time. I think it's so cool how we've all walked out of a class and we said, wow, I feel so insert whatever. I feel so grounded. I feel like I can trust whatever it is going on. Or I feel like my heart is so open and I'm ready to love more. Or maybe it's, with the voice, the throat chakra, maybe it's, I'm so ready to speak my truth. Whatever it is. I mean, it's incredible how we take that class and with or without the teacher knowing that they were maybe theming or going that way, they do send an intention. And from the physical postures to the theme of the class to how even the teacher handles the space, holds the space, can really make you feel a certain way. And to me, that's the chakras.
Yeah. And it's interesting because as I tell Patsy and I both are in teacher training, and I always tell the trainees, like, there'll be days when you have to teach and you're just like not really like you're going through some shit, and it's so fascinating because I will just kind of step away and be like, okay, I'm gonna be like, what do I need? What do my students need? And then when I step away, it's almost there's this voice, whatever is being spoken. It's being spoken to the students, obviously, like I'm speaking, it's not someone else, but it's also me speaking to me of like what I need. And you're right. And that totally comes through. So I think that's the beauty of the chakras. And like, even if we don't put that name to it, like what you were saying, like, my heart feels lighter. Yeah. Or, or like, I feel it in my gut. Like these sayings that we gravitate towards, that is in connection to our chakra system.
100%.
Which, like, to me, I'm like, I want to know what's going on in my body and my mind. I want to be connected. So, we'll dive into the first chakra, kind of our base, which is called Root Muladhara. And this is the foundation of the chakras to move out and up. So, let's dig in.
Oh my gosh. Oh, perfect for the Muladhara. Like, I get it. So I think something too that we should discuss is chakra, what that means in general.
Beautiful.
We can get carried away so easily.
Yeah. With us.
Chakra translates to mean spinning wheel. So it's what I think is really cool is that the ancients say that there's thousands of chakras actually in our body, but only 7 of them are the most powerful ones. And those are really the most popular ones that we know of. Like, you really don't hear people talk about mainly like the chakra of my hand feels this way. Yeah, you know, we connect our emotions with the 7 main ones running up the spine and starting with Muladhara. Yeah. And Mula meaning root, and then Dhara, support.
Yes, I know. It's so beautiful. And, these basic energy systems in our body, the root chakra, Muladhara, is connected towards the base of our spine and is often connected to the stage of our life in the womb. And so it's starting before we're even birthed into this world.
So cool.
I know.
And they say that people who are born in a time of war have a harder time really grasping with the chakra. Like usually for people who are born in a time of chaos or in
famine or something.
Yes, or in the womb whenever like the family's going through shifts.
Yes.
It's really, really more difficult, they say, for them to have a balanced root chakra. Not impossible by any means. And really the root chakra is the biggest wheel. Yes. It's the most difficult one to spin. And I think that that's so true because that one is all about trusting. I think that if we can trust more in so much, if we can just trust that I'm supposed to be here, if we can trust that, that everything, that, Christine asked me to be here for a reason. I don't know. Like, now I'm kind of getting carried away, but trusting is so big. And if I can trust, then I can move on to my passion. Then I can like fly more freely. Then I can move into this place of who am I? And then speaking my voice because I trust that I have this home base.
Yeah. And I think that's really interesting. You're talking about like war and famine. It makes a lot of sense. Like, everything is connected. We talked about this in other podcasts of the idea of like these samskaras, these patterns, but those can even be carried on from generations of like what our past lineage and family have been going through. And so, the root chakra is a beautiful place to look at because, you can obviously compare it to a tree, and a tree isn't going to be healthy if it doesn't have the soil and nutrients of the soil to go through the roots to support the growth of the tree. And that is the same for us. If we don't have that solid foundation and that stability and structure, we're going to have a really hard time growing. And we could grow rapidly and quickly, but we will have the tendency to waver or fall or drift. And, if we look at like the redwoods in California, these trees are so huge and massive and strong and almost breathtakingly and magnificent. And it's like, I want to be like that. Like, I want to have that. But I know in order for that tree to be as big as it is, it's like those roots go very deep.
Very.
And, all that work, we can't see it. It's underneath. And so I think that's the beauty of the chakras is all this is all inner work.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Oh, I love that. And it's interesting too because, what are our roots for us personally? Is our roots our community? Is it our family? Is it the sheer fact of knowing that we have a house, to go home to, a roof over our heads, food in our mouth? What are our roots?
Yeah. And I think that's really important. I think it gets really interesting too if we think about like our Western society in this day and age is really like most of us, we live very much privileged lives, and we have a roof over our head. We have food to eat, and we have hopefully some kind of support structure. However, I think we're in a culture of like things. Like, I want this, and we can easily misinterpret structure and stability with things.
Material items.
Yeah.
Yes.
And something that our generation, our society, I believe lacks is that we are very much in these like nuclear homes, meaning it's like singles, maybe a couple, maybe a small little family. But if we think about history, and civilization, we're thinking about like villages and like generations living together in a home. And, boundaries, totally important. I need my space, like get out of my space when I need it. But I think there's also something to be said of like what you're saying is community. I think community in connection to root chakra is really, really important because if we don't have those like-minded people surrounding us, you kind of feel like lost in an ocean.
Yeah.
Like, where am I? Like, where can I find that like-mindedness?
You're going to be grasping.
Yes.
Like, you're going to be searching for those, like that feeling of support and love that you aren't finding from human connection. You're going to be looking for it in materials. Yeah.
Or, in relationships that aren't really deep and very like superficial.
Like second chakra.
Yeah. We're listening on up. Yeah. And it's kind of sad. It's one of those situations where, it makes me very grateful. I feel like at this point in time in my life, in the past few years, I've actually really found my like community and my people. And I'm like, yes, it feels so good. And I have a really strong group of women in my life. And my work, my career, like I'm surrounded by really amazing people who are striving to continue to grow and to do this work. And that inspires me.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I feel like, I relate to that so much. And I know that both of us manifested this, I was just telling our trainees just the other night that a couple of years ago, I would sit and meditate that I really want my strong community of women. That's like just what I know. Because she's my strong community. Part of it. But I really did want some other women like pillars that we can be there to support each other. If we need to lean on each other, we got it. And here we are. And what's funny is that it kind of was right in front of me the whole time. It's these women that I work with that are, again, on the same path and doing the same work and really trying to get ourselves, out there to better the whole world. Yeah. And that's where I find a big part of my root chakra would be in my friendships and then also in my family. Different stuff. As I've gotten older, I have seen, with my root chakra, whenever things aren't quite going well with my family, maybe there's an argument or a tiff or something going on, I can feel that in my entire life. Looking back, I'm like, oh, well, like, no shit, I didn't have my shit together. Like, my sister and I were in a huge fight at that time or whatever it is,
Yeah. And that's why I like really geek out at the chakra system is because it really is telling of what's going on in your life. If you're feeling like an imbalance or kind of tension, it's just a great way to like check back in with yourself. And so just to come back to root, some of the basic things of root chakra is the color associated is red, which I really like to think of like the earth, like red, dirt, like
clay, like earth
solid.
and clay.
Yes. And it's like, it's our body has its own intelligence of like, before you go and like save the world or whatever you want to do with life, you got to have some grounding. Yes. And, you know, that's why, you know, time and time again, I'll come back to earth and nature as such a metaphor. And another thing that gets me really amped up is there's a lot of construction right now in Austin. And I get really fascinated with the process of construction. And there's some big skyscrapers being built right now. And before you start building up, you have to build down, way down. And it's like, oh, actually, like engineers were really like, hey, look at that tree. It's a really strong tree. It has really deep roots. And the same thing is like, cool. You got to go down. And like, that's something that's interesting with the chakras is root chakra is asking us to be like, hey, you need, I'm like beckoning you to like, hey, how are you? Like, how do you feel in your life right now? What is your sense of security? Where is your security?
Yes. It's almost like, you know, dig deep before you can go anywhere else. You know?
And that it can be scary.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's so cool, though. I also think about times in my life, like I had 2 years. There was 24 months that this is like, I was 19 to 20. I literally moved 11 times.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. And then I look back at that time with my root chakra a lot too. I'm like, wow, where did I find my support? You know, where was I in that place? I know, isn't that crazy?
No, it just makes me think of like when I was in the process of moving Chicago to Austin, I was like, same thing, you know, a ton. And the same thing of like, kind of like the identity of like, where am I? Like, what is going on? And that feeling not very stable.
Right.
Kind of airy.
I think it's really important for people who, whether it's their career path to travel a lot or just their passion to travel a lot, to remember their root chakra. I think it's so easy for them to get disconnected from that when you have a really sturdy one and a healthy one spinning in great balance, they are going to do so much better. You know, trust that wherever they are, they have that security.
It's so interesting. I think about like my parents, they've lived in their house out in Chicago for over 30 plus years. And I'm like, well, you guys are empty nesters. Like you have this home. But, you know, in the same regard, I'm like, wow, it's actually really beautiful because they are really rooted. Like they're really like earth, mama, papa. And I'm like, oh, get it. And so I think too for, you know, whether or not we're in those seasons of change, it's like, well, okay, if we don't have that stability, like maybe we have to work or move a lot for work, or maybe we're just in the season of moving or whatever life situation arrives. Maybe you're going through a breakup and you have to move. And so how can we create structure and stability outside of the physical home?
Right.
Where do we do that? Yeah.
You know, I think personally, for me, it came back to my meditation. You know, if I can spend, even if it's just like 5 minutes a day, and it doesn't have to, I mean, meditation does not have to be in the morning, does not have to be in the evening, doesn't have to look a certain way, but to be still. And for me, it's sitting. Like I've got to be on the ground. It can't be like sitting in a chair, but I have got to feel the earth. That is where I find my stability with my breath, closing my eyes. You know, if the whole world is spinning so fast around me that I can't even catch my breath, I've got to be still. You know, I got to be with myself.
Yeah.
And even when I teach, you know, if I'm like walking around and I'm like getting
Squat.
yes,
Me too. And then,
I always touch yes.
Yeah.
Like if I, you know, like get my lefts and rights confused or like just having a day, whatever's going on, whatever the reason is, like just feeling the ground, the earth is so important. You know what's also really healthy? To be barefoot. Just to be bare, especially outside.
Yes.
Feel the dirt underneath your feet.
The grass. Oh man, it's so good.
It is.
And I think just that and trying to get outside. And it's, you know, coming from Chicago, it was really challenging to feel connected to the earth because we lived in this like concrete jungle, and Austin's kind of becoming like that in some ways. But when I first moved here, I literally felt a shift in the energy, and I was like, oh my gosh, the green belt, it's like right here, like it's right outside downtown, like this is amazing. Cool. And I'm kind of speaking to myself, like I need to get back to that. And anytime that I'm outside, like surrounded by trees, canopy of trees, grass, dirt, rocks, I'm like, wow, it's healing.
It is. I mean,
that we're not in these four walls all the time.
Yes.
That's where we live most of the time.
And just a couple of weeks ago, Christine and I went camping with our partners. And that was not only just like none of us had service, which was the most magical thing ever.
We need it. Get off your phone.
Yes. I mean, at the time, like at first I was like, oh shit, I'm unplugged. All right, this is happening the weekend. And then by the last day, it's like, I don't even want to look at my cell phone.
Yeah.
You know, I just want to be here with you.
Yeah.
I want to look at my partner's eyes. I want to feel this beautiful earth.
Yeah.
I want to look at the sunset. I don't want to look at the screen. And that was magical. That was really great for myself, for my relationship with my partner, and really good for our friendship too. I that's a magical time I'll never forget.
I know. That's where in an earlier podcast I was telling you all about the phrase bonding beyond. That was us. We made that up together while we were camping, and that's where I find you're right. It was so magical. Being unplugged from just the rest of life. We are like inundated with everyone's shit. Like, I'm going this. And I'm a part of it too. I'm not like hating on it. I think it's beautiful. But at the same time, it can spin you in the mental space a lot. And we're not moving from the earth and that connection. So being outside without signal was really a reset and reminded me like, whoa, I can really get sucked into it really quickly. And another thing that was while we were camping that I really believe is really connected to Root Chakra is about sense of security. The first night we were there, I like felt like I almost froze to death. I was like fetal position by like 9:30 p.m. Like I can't move. Like I was in my tent, and it was just like feeling the elements of the earth.
Yeah.
And like, yes, it's been a little chilly outside, but in the middle of the night, you just got what you have, and it just feeling and being connected to what's happening. And then the next night it like poured on us, and our tent was just like destroyed with water, like all of our bedding. And Patsy and her partner were like, let's make it work. And we just like snuggled all together in their tent. And that was a moment of also really realizing the earth and its power. And it was because Root Chakra is so connected to stability and safety and security. It was a moment of like, well, fuck, like that's my home for the night and it's destroyed. What am I going to do? And, it was almost going back into this like village mindset of like, oh, you have each other's back and that like system of like support. And it was very much like, oh, I'm taken care of. I'm feeling nurtured. I'm feeling supported.
Yeah. And what's really interesting too is by us bringing you into our tent, it was almost like we felt more support too. We can't survive alone.
Yeah.
We need our community. We need our other people. And it was also warmer with the body warmth, like 4 people versus 2.
Warm.
But it was really sweet. It was, okay, we saw that your tent was destroyed and none of us skipped a beat.
I know.
Okay, let's start grabbing the dry stuff and
making
we got
it work.
This. Yes.
Yeah, and that's why I think like community, and I think about our society and why it's so individualistic. Like I am a very independent person. I like to be on my own and do my own thing. But at the same time, it's like you got to have balance. And life is a lot more rewarding and rich when it's done together in community and relationships. And yes, it can get a little more messy because you have different people's opinions and perspectives. But it's about like, hey, let's uplift each other and help each other grow.
And I think I'm probably getting a little sidetracked from this, but I just got to say, even when the temptation of judgment comes, like I think it's like even more important to remember that we are here for each other. Like whether that judgment comes on myself or for other people, I think that that's probably the most important time to reach out. Like for myself, like, okay, let me be vulnerable and talk about this. For other people, let me stop myself. Let me see how I can help them rather than judge them.
Yeah.
Like you know what I mean?
But that comes to root chakra too, of feeling like strong and stable within yourself and your like identity.
Yeah.
Your identity starts at the base.
You know what? You're so right. Like, and trusting that, like trusting whatever this fear or whatever, this judgment, whatever it stems from, is going to be dug out.
Yeah. Yeah. And it can be painful.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad you brought that up. So, Anodea Judith, who we will kind of pull from a lot, she's an author of Eastern Body, Western Mind, is a great book if you're interested in learning more. It's it's pretty deep.
It's amazing. It's like my chakra Bible.
Yeah, I love it. It is so good. But she says there's like a demon for each chakra, something that kind of like can pull you off balance. And for root chakra is fear. And so that makes sense of this like judgment of not feeling like enough.
Yeah.
I think about, there's a quote, I'm paraphrasing, but it's about, again, going back to trees. I should live in the woods or something.
I know.
Or the mountains. Anyways, like trees, they're all beautiful and different, but like there's obviously no comparison between them. Like not one tree is like, I'm taller than you. And you're smaller. And it's like, they're just working together and, literally bringing life to us, to everything else. And it's like, oh, well, like that's how it should be of like, okay, I am me and I have my own power and like life and energy moving through me, just as you have that through you. And it's like the fear, where does that fear come from?
Yeah.
Oh,
I know. And I think it is deep rooted. Yeah. I think it, a lot of times I feel like it comes from way in the past, which makes sense of if there are some big first chakra issues, they might stem from being in the womb and being in this place of
what was our mother going through.
Yes. Fascinating.
Yeah.
So
now I'm like, what was
you reminded me of there like another quote, but it's kind of a story about blades of grass. They all look at each other. And what they say to each other is grow, grow, grow.
Oh, I love that.
Isn't that pretty?
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah. And how much can we learn from that?
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah. And I think like that's once we feel established in that seat of the earth and our connection to it, then we have that basis to be like, oh, okay, like I can grow. I've dealt with my fear, or I'm dealing with my fear. I'm not running away from my fear. And to replace, how do we fight fear is to face it and be like, wow, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Or I'm feeling fearful, or I'm feeling unstable, and not just ignoring it.
Acknowledge it. Yes. And know that that's okay.
And it's okay.
Like
because
that's
it's
like
human.
Totally being human. Like it is okay to be afraid.
Yes. Yeah. And I think once we see it, we're like, okay, then we can also not judge it like, oh, why am I afraid of that? But also being like, well, in a compassionate way, why am I afraid of that?
Right.
And just curiosity.
Yes. And how can I invite more trust into this situation? How can I invite more trust into like whatever it is I'm fearful about? Where can I kind of transform that? Acknowledge and play with it. Like really play with it and not to be afraid of the feeling itself. Because they call that a second arrow. When you have your first feeling, okay, my first feeling is fear. Okay, I'm going to be guilty that I feel fearful, or even like afraid of the fear itself. The second arrow. Yeah.
Oh, I like that. That's really cool.
Isn't that interesting?
And it's, to me, it's like, well, fear is obviously comes from something deep, whether it's from our upbringing, something trauma we experienced, and that can definitely live in our body and our cells. And it's like, so we acknowledge our fear, whatever that's happening, but how do we move out of that fear? How do we wash that fear away? And something that I like to come back to is the idea of, is this right knowledge? Meaning, is what I'm afraid of have I just created this crazy story about it and like made it more intense than it actually is?
Yeah, no kidding.
You know, is it really a tiger or is it like a cockroach?
I mean, both a cockroach is pretty gross too.
But, you know, sometimes I think we can make our fears become bigger and we become smaller.
Yeah.
You know, and then it becomes overwhelming and it's okay. So when we face it, then we're like, oh, actually, you're not this crazy tiger. You're actually kind of like this cute little cat. You're a little like bizarre, but I can handle you. And it's like, okay, honing it in of like, did I add extra layers on? Because that's not right knowledge.
Totally.
That's just me like playing it up for whatever reason.
But isn't it so easy to do that? To just get stuck in our heads with what a situation is. And then we turn it into something totally opposite, you know, even with when we, you know, I love to go back to the 4 agreements. You know, we always make assumptions of what people are going to say, how they're going to respond. And then we take it personal, even before this conversation even happened. And that's just part of human nature. It's part of the monkey mind. And I think acknowledging it, like what we just said, and then playing, you know, I love how you said, is this fear right? Like, is this real knowledge?
Yeah.
Is this, like, there's one thing to be said if this is really truth. Or am I just making something up in my head? Like, is the story in my head?
Yeah. Yeah. And another thing that happens with fear is rumination. So like you say you have a conversation with someone and it doesn't go well. Like you're like, fuck, are you leaving? You're like, I didn't say the right things. I wanted to say this. And this was what happens. Then all of a sudden you're like, the conversation is done. And then you go home and you're just like going over and over and over and over and over again. And you're like, well, what if I said this? And then they would have been like that. And then this would have happened and this. And it's like, the conversation's done. It ended, you know? And it's like, okay, if it really is bothering you, then we have to move from like, okay, I didn't finish that conversation. I really need to say this. You know, maybe take a few breaths and do some breath work and meditation and go back and call them.
Right.
And
take action.
Take action with it because it will drive you insane.
Isn't that funny? It's almost like fear of the past, fear of something that already happened. Because we usually think about fear with the future, but there totally is fear of like, this just happened and I'm still fearful because I'm pissed at myself or whatever.
Exactly. So I think it's being in root chakra isn't just about like, okay, I'm grounded. I feel the earth. Like, that's it. Like, life's good. Like,
I'm barefoot.
Yeah, I'm barefoot and doing all the things. Fear it's not like you complete it and it's done. It can come in waves. And so I think it is seeing the fear, acknowledging the fear itself, and then becoming aware if you're adding extra to it. Or you might even, you know, I think for me, I have the tendency to actually lower the fear beyond what it is. Like, I'm just like, oh, well, I'm actually afraid, but it's not okay. And that's how I deal with it. And actually it really helps me to be like, well, that's just going to happen. It's okay if it's a fearful.
I can so see that with you. Seriously. And that's honestly, that's a quality about you that I admire.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a beautiful quality to be a little bit, acknowledge it, but you're not necessarily fearless, but you say, okay, I'm going to keep going.
Yeah. And that's where I'm like, I don't want to be
held back.
Yeah, or frozen in fear. Like, I'm like, no, there's so much to live and experience. And like, fear is a real thing. It's going to happen. And sometimes it's really intense. I remember, actually, this was a really intense moment. I was teaching in teacher training. And I usually turn this puppy, my Apple Watch, on Do Not Disturb when I'm teaching. So like texts don't come through. And then all of a sudden, I see my mom called. And then my sister called. My mom called again. And then all of a sudden, I get a text while I'm teaching. And I just look at it accidentally and it's like, Dad's in the ER. And I'm like, oh, fuck. You know, but I literally couldn't like skip a beat. I'm like teaching this class. So I just like breathe, like do my little squat thing. I'm like, all right, okay. And then end class and we talk about class. And I end up sharing with them what's going on with my dad. But it was a moment of like frozen in fear just for a second. And then I was like, nope, if I stay frozen, then I'm going to stay there.
Right.
And I just got to move.
Yes.
And so, and it was great. And then I was able to share and be very vulnerable. Dad is okay. But anyways, those moments are going to happen. And it's just like, I don't want fear to win.
So I thank you for sharing that. And I want to ask you, when that happened, did you feel that in your body somewhere?
Oh,
Like, do
definitely.
you remember? Like, but
I felt it down. Yeah.
Oh, how funny.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah,
Isn't that
that's
wild?
cool.
I was just like, okay.
Yeah. And there's charts of like where we hold these emotions.
Mhm.
And I think that fear, I might just be like wanting it to be down, but I really think that the chart of the heat of the body of fear is said to be held down
Deep.
low.
Yeah, it is. And that's where I felt it. I was like, oh shit, oh no. And yeah, I think fear can freeze us and it will stifle us to grow if we just sit in it. And maybe it's, I think also root chakra of having that community, and you touched on this earlier, is having people you can be vulnerable with. So if you don't have that right now, I encourage you to be able to find a place where you can actually write it down, because I have this idea of when you vocalize or write down or share with someone, you are letting that darkness out. So there's more light that can come in and basically brings more space to have perspective.
Yes. I'm so glad you just said that too, because I was just thinking, what is another tool that I use to help myself when I'm becoming fearful, mostly fearful or going through issues? And it's mantra or affirmations.
Yes.
And so I like Christine, I encourage you, if you do take up the tool of writing things down and creating your own mantra, to keep it positive. So instead of saying, I want to get over the fear of being broke my whole life, you could start saying the mantra, the affirmation to yourself, I have financial abundances, and just say that while you're driving, while you're walking, and remember and believe it. Like, it's fascinating to see what happens in your life when you actually take on the feeling of your mantras, of your affirmations, and you visualize yourself put a feeling to it. What does it feel like to have that mantra, to have, if it is financial abundance?
Yeah, that feels great.
Yeah. I feel very joyful.
I think that's beautiful, of keeping it in the positive and have it be something you come back to. Recite it, say it, chant it, write it down, have it on your mirror, write it on the back screen of your phone, something where it's a constant reminder, like, I am safe. Or, you know what I mean? If you're going through something where you're like, I do not feel good, like, I just don't feel safe, I'm safe, I'm secure. Something that just brings you back to that base, like, I'm held, I'm supported by the earth, I'm grounded, because I really believe, especially in our society, we're in this world all the time, like head, eyes, ears, mind, monkey mind. And so we're like, this like basically like this like ball moving on our bodies, like, oh, the senses. And so, or, something even like doing mantra, or like giving yourself a foot massage, rolling your feet on tennis balls, and being nurturing to yourself, because that root chakra is about stability and support. So, yeah.
Oh, I love that. Self-care is so huge because it will play a part in your body. And speaking of the body, we talked about chakra as a wheel, a spinning wheel. So all of these wheels can move too fast, which we call excess, or they move too slow, which is deficient. And even though the root chakra is the biggest one and the most difficult one to spin, it can move too fast for some people. And we usually will see that when gluttony or, starting to, taking on, like as we talked about at the beginning, lots of material items and almost too rooted, like afraid to move or afraid to go with the flow or to change, very stuck.
Yeah. Actually, now I think about my parents again. I'm like, yes, they're rooted. I think they might be, my dad might be, hey dad, I love you if you listen to this, but he is not a fan of like traveling.
Oh, wow.
I know. Yeah. He's like, just like his father. My grandfather never got on an airplane his whole life.
Wow. Yeah. And you're such a little travel bug.
I know. Isn't that funny? Yeah. My mom is. And so she's like, come on. But he is in this place of like, these are his things, and like his house is this beautiful home, and he actually is he has a ton of plants, which is really fascinating.
Oh, how funny.
So he feels like gardener of everything.
Yes.
But at the same time, I'm like, but there's so much to experience and explore. So that can also, keep you stuck in a place and not have the opportunity to see and experience. Yeah. But I think for most part, I feel like a lot of people are not grounded.
100%. Yes. Because that's also the world, the culture we live in right now is go from this to that, to that, to that. And we I know you've heard this before, we glorify busy.
Oh, yeah. I think I do.
I know you do.
Thanks for being honest.
But it's
you're right.
so easy to, especially in my opinion, especially as women. I think that there is a pressure. I used to be really sensitive about talking about the issues that I feel personally between men and women. But we live in a time when I think that they need to be discussed.
Yes.
I think that it's prevalent that this needs to be talked about. And one of the issues is that there's pressure for women to be the mama, to have the job, to keep the house clean, and then to go run 1,000 errands all in one day and bake the fucking apple pie.
Yeah, you're right. You're totally right.
I love that phrase of stop glorifying busy.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, Patsy, I hear you.
We share it. Christine and I really I need to kind of get a little bit more of her oomph. But I think that I share with her a little bit of my slow, my.
It's good.
Yeah. Even how we talk is funny. I'm like, da, da. And I'm like, okay, gotta keep up with Christine. Talk a little bit faster.
So yes, I do. And that's why for me, I'm very transparent human being. You guys heard my story before. And I love being transparent because it's an opportunity for me to expose my weakness, my strengths, and then I want to grow. Like those blades of grass. My hope for you, I know Patsy's hope for you is we want to help you grow in your own path and journey. So, as we kind of wind down this session, we really want you to think about the patterns in your life and what patterns do you have in your life that are bringing more a sense of support and stability? And then what patterns in your life are taking away from your support and stability? And be honest without any judgment, go back to, way back to the idea of nonviolence and ahimsa, being truthful to yourself and so that you can grow. Because a lot of this is looking deep within and saying, okay, for me, I am definitely a busybody. What does that say? Is there something that I'm not looking at right now in my life where I'm I really need to be? Probably. And, I'm working on it. That's why I do restorative yoga and meditate and do a lot of breath work because I need the earth and I love feeling the earth, and I know that supports me. So, look at those, what supports you, what brings stability and what doesn't. And then there might be something that isn't, that you're very much a parent of, that you need to let go of and replace it with something that's going to be positive, going on a walk outside and just observing Mother Nature.
Oh my gosh, that's in my opinion, one of the most beautiful ways to connect with your first chakra is just observe Mother Nature.
Yeah.
And see how you feel before you do that and then after you do that. And leave your phone at home.
Good. Yes. Beautiful. So thank you guys so much for sharing with us today. Have a beautiful day and namaste.
Namaste.